When it comes to defending in FIFA, many players tend to focus on the latest meta or strategies that become popular after every patch. However, the truth is that 90% of successful defending in FIFA is based on fundamental principles that apply in any version of the game. These principles are well understood by experienced players who consistently perform at a high level. Jockeying, and the correct way to do it, that I have been using for many years with great success. Jockeying is a technique that involves holding down the jockey button, L2 on PlayStation, LT on Xbox, while using the right analog stick to move your player in a controlled circular motion. The idea is to pretend to move towards the ball player or the space as you can see in the video, and quickly adjust to a different direction. This technique is highly effective for several reasons. First and foremost, it forces your opponent to make a decision. In most cases, they will either rush and play a pass that isn't actually on, or move into space in the opposite direction to where you feinted to go. At this point, you can anticipate their next move before they even know it themselves. But that's not all. Jockeying also has a psychological effect on your opponent. By making it appear as though you can read their every move, you can cause them to panic and make mistakes. They may start playing faster, taking more risks, and ultimately making more errors that you can capitalize on. Furthermore, jockeying gives you greater control over your team as a defensive unit. By being in control of the situation, you can ensure that your players are positioned correctly and ready to react to any potential threats. Implementing this technique alone can help you win more matches in FUT Champions and climb through the divisions in FIFA Ultimate Team. When we talk about cutting passing lanes, it's not just about trying to close the lane where you think your opponent is about to pass, because unless you're using constant pressure, then they will almost always have multiple passing options available, meaning they will just pass to another player. And as we've discussed before, you always want to be one step ahead of your opponent, not one step behind. To do this, we need to be forcing our opponent to make a decision, and we do this by cutting multiple passing lanes in quick succession, usually the 2 or 3 easiest passing options your opponent has. By doing this, we force them to look for an alternative pass. This moment of vulnerability often leads to panic, playing a pass that was available a split second before, which you've now covered, gaining easy possession, or they may freeze up entirely, allowing you to swoop in and take the ball from them. In fact, you'll see these scenarios play out multiple times in the clips being shown. Slow it down or watch it back if you have to, and as I said at the beginning, this is one of the best things you can do to take your defense to a whole new level as it forces you to be proactive, not reactive. Also, don't be discouraged if you get it wrong here and there and concede by selecting the wrong players. This is normal. Overall, you will enjoy playing FIFA a lot more when you feel like you're in control of the game and knowing things your opponent does not know. Many people misunderstand that a strong defense is built on a set of basic principles executed properly. It's not about immediately trying to win the ball back. For instance, why would you need to win the ball from your opponent's defensive players? How many goals do you see defenders and midfielders actually score? For years, I tried various tips and tricks based on the latest meta after a patch, but no matter what I did, I always conceded goals. It was incredibly frustrating. However, things changed once I learned the fundamentals of defending in FIFA, which is crucial if you want to win more matches, especially in FUT Champs. This time, we're going to focus on tracking runners and why it's crucial to implement this into your game. When defending, you must be aware that your opponent's primary objective is to get as close to your goal as they can, in the shortest amount of time possible, using the path of least resistance. So what does this mean?
I don't even know what that means.
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
No, it's not. It
Gets the people going.
Essentially, your opponent will typically play the most obvious pass. Therefore, you should quickly scan the field and switch to the correct player as soon as you see what you believe to be the obvious pass. And 95% of the time you will be right. Usually, it will be a player in space or a player making a run. Runs can be triggered by your opponent, or if they have high-rated players, their attacking AI will make them run into space. Either way, the player making the run will point their arm in the direction they intend to go. By keeping an eye on your opponent's options, you can quickly identify their most likely next move and react in time to deal with it. So watch the clips to get a better understanding of how to perform this, then apply it to your game to stop conceding goals that are easily avoidable and start to win more games in FIFA.
That's player switching. You see, there's a lot of confusion about this topic, and really it's simple, yet the way it comes across is almost like the pro players are experts at player switching and using the right analog stick in particular. I think we can all agree that pretty much everyone who plays FIFA player switches the same way. We flick the right analog stick in the direction of the player we intend to control. There's nothing more to it than that. And if you think about it logically, it wouldn't be in EA Sports' best interests to create a game that's difficult to play, as that would massively hurt sales. On the contrary, it would be more beneficial to make a game that's easy for almost everyone to play. So then, how do some players make it seem so effortless while others can't seem to master this? The answer is anticipation. Let me show you. When my opponent has the ball, I'm keeping my eye on his options, as he is. For example, when you have the ball, it's natural for us to look for our best route to the opponent's goal. So when you make a pass, you already know what you're going to do when the player receives the ball, whether it be turn into space or pass straight to another player. And the ultimate aim is the goal. Therefore, the objective is to get the ball to the striker as fast and efficiently as possible. With this information, we know that our opponent wants to play passes forward and to the center. Now that we know this, it's easier for us to anticipate his next move and the move after that, giving us more than enough time to switch to the correct player. Because most of the time, I'm not too concerned about the player with the ball. I'm thinking about what he's going to do next, and also what he's going to do after that. When we approach things in this way, we are always 1 or 2 steps ahead of the opponent, giving us plenty of time to player switch to the correct player well in advance of our opponent's next moves. Watch the clips back to get a better understanding, and then implement this into Jockeying to become a competent defender in FIFA.
We'll be covering the correct way to use the second man press, which, when done properly, makes it almost impossible for your opponent to score. This information I'm about to give you is gold, so make sure you stick around until the end, as I'll be explaining a technique to use for anyone who's struggling. So the key here is not to overcomplicate it, which many people tend to do. Remember how I always talk about being at least 1 step ahead of your opponent. This applies here. The secret to using second man press effectively is to cover your opponent's most obvious pass, or most dangerous pass, or the space in which you think your opponent will go, while simultaneously using second man press to put pressure on the ball carrier. What this will do is hurry your opponent, as they will not know which player you are controlling. They just panic because they see a player running towards them, so their attention is turned towards the player carrying the ball instead of their next pass option. Then what happens is they will rush and make the last pass that they see was on. But what they don't see is your player, who you have moved into a position to intercept or tackle, and this applies whether you are pressing your opponent's back line or defending in your own box. It's all the same. I've seen many people talking about keeping your back line together at all times. While this is not completely wrong, it's more of a general rule. Not an absolute must, because as you know, FIFA is played at a pace where you have to think and react almost instantaneously to what's happening on the pitch. And to give yourself the best chance of doing that means you need to be thinking ahead of what's taking place at any given moment. And sometimes that requires you to shift players into positions to be able to stop what your opponent is trying to do, regardless of where on the pitch you are. So watch the clips over and you will get an understanding of how I move my players, and by doing it this way, it's inevitable that I will win the ball back without having to try too hard. At the beginning, I said I had something for anyone who's finding it difficult. So a method I can suggest if you're struggling is to start off by only using your outside players to press as the second man. And by that I mean you control your central midfielders and center backs to cover the passes into the middle of the pitch, whilst using the wide players and strikers to press as the second man. Practicing this first will help you.